All right. We'll wait a few minutes as we just we always like to wait a couple of minutes before we get officially started.
Because Marco, do you want to if you can pass me control so I can share?
Oh, that minor issue, all right?
Yeah, just notice that.
You just want me to make you co-host?
Yeah, that works.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right, for those that are in attendance, we're gonna wait a couple of minutes before we start, just to get everybody time to get logged into the Zoom webinar. And thank you for your time and patience. So we'll officially start, I guess, we'll go at 11:02. So I'll give everybody another minute.
Excellent.
Yes, sir. I will do that, Colby. Thank you for the note. So for those of you who are still joining us, we'll be starting here in just about 30 seconds as everybody gets logged in. Okay, let's get started. So first and foremost, thank you for everybody attending our webinar today as part of our monthly webinar series, supporting employee collaboration in the age of hybrid work. The goal of today's webinar is to talk about really 4 key points: understanding how COVID-19 lockdowns and the shift to working from home has altered employee expectations; strategies for driving a unified employee experience, whether they're at home, in the office, or working from a remote location; empowering business productivity in a modern workplace that demands flexibility; and how Zoom, our partner today, has helped their clients achieve distributed collaboration through their voice, video, and chat platforms. A couple of quick housekeeping items on the Q&A piece. We want to have this interactive as much as possible. So for those who have questions, please do address those questions via the Q&A. And we'll hope to have this as interactive and answer any questions that we have. As for those of you who know, the pandemic has changed things quite a bit, and for all of us in the workforce. And where would we be without Zoom? My kids probably wouldn't have been able to go to school, and so Zoom has become now a verb, kind of in the English language. And we're really excited to have Zoom here today. So I don't need to really address kind of who Zoom is, but I'll let Colby, our presenter, do that. As far as Teleprise, for those of you who do not know us, a little blurb about us: we specialize in helping clients translate what we call through the technology chaos and helping them move that into streamlined efficiency by helping them manage through what we call the technology life cycle of pain. And we really do that by helping clients identify, source, procure, and implement the solutions from the carriers and providers as a value-added representative of various carriers and vendors out there. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started with today's content and introduce our guest speaker. And thank you very much. We introducing Zoom's head of Zoom Phone Americas, Colby Nish. Colby, thank you again for joining and participating in our monthly webinar series, and really look forward to the conversation. And again, thank you for your support and your team support on this conversation today.
Great to be here, Marco. Thank you. And it was a privilege to be connected back with you again. It's for those, probably no one on this call knows, but Marco and I worked together 2 decades ago. So really a blast from the past, and it really brought back the glory days where, as we worked together, we were really focused on delivering the best service to our customers, to be prompt and deliver the best value add to differentiate ourselves. And glad to see Teleprise is still doing that, and happy to be here with you all. After that time, I went over to Cisco. Cisco for 14 years, leading different sales teams, video go-to-market, as well as our sales strategy for Americas. And then joined Zoom a little over 2 years ago to build up what is Zoom Phone today. We have an awesome team of a little over 100 people that are really the best in the business that have sold PBXs and phone systems in the past. and really helping those customers migrate from one platform over to Zoom. And so I'm going to walk through a little bit exactly the 4 points that Marco talked about, the impact on COVID. We see a lot of customers asking, how do I go back to the office? How do I do it safely? What are those tools to help me be effective? And especially through the pandemic, we've learned a lot, but we're also continuing to evolve. So I'm going to jump right in here. And I think we've all seen this last year has really been quite a change. When the pandemic hit and employees were told to head home, it wasn't that simple, right? Did we have the right tools in place? If I wanted to collaborate with my people, did I have a meeting platform that I could be effective? Was it simple? Could my end users pick that up? And a lot of times, only certain people have those licenses. Special knowledge workers, executives, people that were on the road. Now when they move all of those functions to working remote, really change things. And for us at Zoom, it was amazing. I mean, you saw overnight, we went from 10 million users to over 300 million daily active users. Incredible. Absolutely growing pains through that process. But we've all had those pains. And, for those in IT that are on this call, I think we've all seen that IT really had to step up to the forefront to make the business continue to work, but also to transform ourselves in not only how we're working, how do we continue to work in a new dynamic where all of our users are not in the office? How do we transform our tools, deliver those services, and how do we do it in a way that makes us productive and competitive in the market? We've now seen that shift over to trust. So as companies are starting to look to come back to the office, some are in the office in certain states, certain locations, you have a fair amount of employees that are concerned about their safety. I think we have a lot more germaphobes than we had in the past. But I want to know, is this a safe environment? Maybe I don't want to touch things. I probably don't want to touch a rail in the subway. But nowadays, I may not want to touch a phone or a whiteboard inside of my office. And so we'll talk a little bit about that throughout our time together. And then we've seen just this huge change. So when we look at the amount of increase of job searches for remote users, that has consistently ticked up 4x the number of jobs being posted for remote users. And I know I could tell you at Zoom, we used to have a lot of people physically in an office in San Jose, in Denver, in Atlanta, Kansas City, certain offices. We don't care. We get the best people wherever they're located and they can work remote, and we have the tools to make them successful. And I think a lot of companies are in that same dilemma. But we're also seeing now, what does that look like in the return to work? So we see some stats like these, like 74% are thinking they're going to permanently have some type of flexible work environment. And we see different things. Is it Monday, Friday that we let them have off? Well, now all of a sudden that's a 5-day weekend. How much productivity do I get out of them being in the office or at home? Or do we have some people come every other day? People are struggling with how to figure that out. And I think it's really important. Do we have the right tools to support whatever that paradigm is that we have out there? The good news we've seen throughout this is those flexible environments, when we see this improvement in our top performers, but also our low performers. People are much more productive. I would argue I'm one of those people that the company gets a lot more time out of me now. I miss the commute. I miss the flight at times and the ability to catch up on work versus being on all day. But we're seeing a huge impact on productivity based on these tools.
It's interesting, Colby, if I can just interject here for one question. We just posted something on LinkedIn, in our LinkedIn channel a short while ago that was a study done by Forrester, right? And it talks about the top initiatives for organizations, and it's interesting in supporting a permanent hybrid workforce. And they were as follows, right? 76% said it was operational efficiency. 73% said it was remote work experience. 69% said it was hybrid work experience. And according to the study, the most strategic and impactful collaboration activities were working sessions, planning sessions, group brainstorming. And I know for us, as we've been remote since March 7th of 2020 for all of our employees throughout the nation, that is some of the stuff that we do struggle with. And what people are saying is, the most difficult things to perform. 37% of the respondents that are part of this study by Forrester, we're saying that they're extremely, only 37 are extremely satisfied with the current collaboration and productivity. And 80% agreed that investing in this type of cohesive collaboration solution was the most important initiative, and will help the organization stay competitive and maintain that industry leadership. So it ties into kind of exactly what you're saying. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to kind of bring that up, because it was a very interesting article that we were looking at the other day.
No, that's a great article, and I think the 37% you mentioned, that's a very sad number, right? You have a lot of people that aren't happy about the tools that they have. And this is an area where, as the pandemic hit and people got sent home, you think about it, and I run our phone team, right? So it was really hard to pick up a phone and get that to work at home. Didn't matter what solution you're on. If you had an on-premise PBX, did you have the right infrastructure in place to be able to support that? And then secondarily, we saw a lot of people roll out soft phones. And the amount of complaints we hear from customers of like, hey, that soft phone's confusing. I don't get it. It's difficult. It wasn't what we hear from Zoom, which is, boy, it just works. It was super intuitive. It was simple. My end users picked it up. And we had companies, like we had a financial service company deploy 180,000 users in a week, moving from their existing platform over to Zoom. You think about the amount of onboarding enablement, that would be a nightmare. And they would have completely laughed prior to the pandemic that they would even consider doing something like that. If you don't have those right tools that are stupid simple for your end users to pick up and use, you're asking for trouble. And that's what we probably see from those 37%, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that us in technology, we always forget, right, is that from an adoption, we're very early in the adopter, especially obviously, as I was mentioning at the start, 18 months ago, Zoom was known in the corporate world, but it wasn't a verb in the language. Today, oh, I'm on a Zoom, right? And it doesn't matter whether you're 5 years old or you're 90 years old, people know what Zoom is. But we're also, I think some of the things we forget a lot of the time is that in corporate America, as early adopters in dealing in technology, we forget that there are older technologies out there. We were just talking to an organization that still had a T1 PRI on a PBX 18 months into the pandemic and are still struggling on how are they going to get their remote workers, because their calls are coming in and coming out. It's costing them money. It's causing them challenges, productivity, the whole ecosystem they're trying to reinvent, but it ties into some of the stuff we'll get into later is how do they take that existing infrastructure and move, right? Because when you're standing something up from brand new, it's very easy. When you're trying to integrate all these different things, it's not that easy. And that migration of 180,000 users, that's an amazing story because that's extremely quick. So
exactly. Yeah. And just further along our conversation, right? So we've seen this change, right? The workplace is now everywhere. And when we look at that workforce and where are they? They are everywhere now. And it's really changed from work being a place where I go to being work as a thing I do. I do it anywhere, right? I can work from anywhere if I have the right tools. And it's just been an interesting dynamic. And so when we look at how is Zoom helping people, and you talked a little bit about this, Marco, we'll dig into some of those exact use cases. We have seen really the power of UCaaS. We've heard a lot of people talk about unified communications as a service being that next frontier, and people being in this market for many years trying to get there. And we've all taken different approaches, and we'll talk about Zoom's approach. But that single platform, single architecture has really been the key to Zoom's success because it is simple, it works, it's reliable. We've had 100% uptime this last year. And this is through phenomenal growth and the ability to scale in a distributed architecture that's a cloud native application versus the old ways of having a cluster of 16 servers of my PBX. I've got a video MCU sitting there and I'm trying to figure out how do I trunk and get those to work and mix in other platforms. Extremely difficult. And so this is where we have really shined, where customers are looking at, hey, how do I collapse these different collaboration applications into one subscription? The one is financially much better cost savings, but more importantly, is it more productive and allows me to run my business in a better way that supports my end users at home, in the office, and on the road? So when we look at where we come, just to take a step back in time, and Mark, I think you were talking about this, right? We had people with T1s going into it. We see everything in between. Working with a customer last week who had Cisco's IP communicator, if you remember that product. Boy, talk about being back a few versions. But everyone's come at this from different ways, right? We've seen the conferencing market where you used to call, AT&T or your service provider just for audio conferencing. And then that really moved into adding video. We saw like the Tambergs, the Poly, Rad Visions of the world come out and change the financial dynamics and putting those boxes on-prem, which were big iron with big dollar signs next to them. And then we saw the WebExes of the world and others pop up around, hey, let's move this to a cloud and put this into a subscription. That's the same path we've seen for phones, from TDM-based PBXs over to voice over IP, and then people starting with voice in the cloud. If you look at where Zoom started, we started 10 years ago, and we started from a video first perspective. And this is where we really show up as a differentiator when you look at the experience between one platform to another. If you start from a fax side or a voice side first, and then try to cobble on and add video on top of that, those that are using those platforms, you see the struggles of getting those to work. Whereas we've come the other way. When you start with video first, you can have the best video quality in the world, but if you don't have great audio quality like we're having right now, it's worthless, right? If you don't understand me, it's a bad meeting. Well, that is actually what Zoom Phone is. And this is where Zoom has been able to leverage that single platform and change that into things that you're all seeing every day, right? We're seeing healthcare completely transform, being able to do telemedicine, telehealth sessions over video and meet with doctors. And a lot of that is, all of these have been sped up through the pandemic. Things like all of our kids on Zoom last year. If we didn't know Zoom, we ended up learning it from our school and trying to figure that out. And I can tell you that was a challenge, right? Having 3 kids at home and you're trying to work at the same time and you're all on Zoom, difficult, but a tool allowed us to be successful. And across the board, we have seen Zoom really transform from what was more of a business platform for conferencing and transform into areas like delivering fitness and events and everything under it's amazing if you look at our on Zoom platform of what people are doing to move services onto a video first environment.
I always think, where would we be in the pandemic if this was, 20, 25 years ago? It really, the technology really has allowed us to continue to do our job, right? Without it, I don't know how we would have gotten through things if this was 2 decades ago without this technology.
No, and the thing is, we all had some technology. Just did it serve the needs we had this last year and a half, especially with these increased needs and the scale. And so this is where, if you're not familiar with Zoom, talked about Zoom as a platform. So it's a single platform, single application. If you're on, like we're all on right now, as a Zoom user, you're registered to multiple data centers in an active stance globally across the world. And then that's what powers all these experiences. And we'll talk about a few of these, right? The ability to have video, chat, video rooms, phone, whiteboarding, email, webinars, events, all onto one single platform. But when we look a little bit closer, you have to have that same consistent experience at home versus in the office or even on the road. And this is where we've done extremely well, because if it's a different application or a different experience, you feel like a second-class citizen when you're trying to work from home, it's challenging. And we'll talk about some of those use cases, which is we're all used to this little square now on Zoom. That completely changes when we go back into the office and there's 6 of us around a table. So what should that look like? And to give you a glimpse of where we're really focused on back to the office, these are some of the use cases. And if we were to kind of look at these, and there might be areas that you on the call are also looking at, from a health and safety standpoint, you have the ability to do virtual receptionists. Do you want someone physically up there? Or would you rather have a kiosk where someone could check in either with a QR code or be able to touch control and be able to select where you want to get to? Environmental data. So all of our new video endpoints, systems that are out there, and a lot of the older ones have environmental data. So what is going on in the air. It's sensing that, it's sensing heat, but also what's in the environment. And then how many people are in that room. You may have a policy that, hey, this room is set up for 6 people. And because of safety concerns, we're not going to have more than 4 people in here. So having that people counter and being able to control that starts to become very interesting. We're seeing a lot of companies ask for those features. Things like digital signage, hot desking, room scheduling, we'll talk about those. But from a hands-free communication, this is another area we see a lot of customers really happy to see innovation, which is, I talked about this beginning. I don't want to touch anything, right? I want to come in and check in. I don't want to touch anything. And then I want to go into that conference room and I want to be able to pair with that video system if I'm going to use it for the day. I don't want to touch it. I'm either going to pair directly with it with my own cell phone, or I can use a QR code and take that over. And we'll talk a little bit about that hot desking capability. But you may have seen at Zoomtopia, the ability that we showed this last week. Hey, I might be needing to whiteboard. Well, I don't want to go touch someone else's pen. Was that sanitized? Well, you can do that directly from your phone as well. So a lot of these wireless pairing, wireless sharing, voice control features are really what we're seeing address a lot of those concerns as people go back to the office in concern with safety. And so let me show you a few of those. So Zoom Rooms. Zoom Rooms is a license that is for the standalone video conferencing rooms. We are very agnostic. So we have companies like Poly, Neat, Logitech, Aver, and others that make those devices. We power the software. And what's beautiful about that is any room you go into, it doesn't matter which vendor, you pick the right vendor, the right camera, the right setup for your room, but that user experience is going to be identical in any of them. So really simple for your users to walk in, easily join. We talked about wireless sharing. So, you ever have tried to figure out where's the dongle? How do I get this set up? Oh crap, maybe didn't get that set up right. I need to call somebody. You don't need to do that. You walk into a room, automatically it senses you're in that room from your Zoom client and you share. Really simple. Whiteboarding available across not only the meetings, but across all of our endpoints. And then there's integrations with Miro and others that you can do very rich integrations and things like Infinite Canvas. Now, what I'd also mention is on the rooms perspective, this is I guess maybe I was going to say a secret. It's one our sales guys, cringe sometimes when we share, but one single Zoom Room license allows you and entitles you to unlimited digital signage across your environment, unlimited room scheduling and displays, and virtual kiosks. So you have the ability to manage that based on location, based on your floors. But these are things that we're seeing as people go back to the office is, hey, I want scheduling. I want to know, is that room available? I want to be able to book it. I want to have signage for things that alerts across my campus, and I don't want to pay a ton of money for it.
And how are you seeing, from, and maybe you'll get into this, a little bit here, but, how are you seeing as these employees are starting to come to work, right? I mean, some are being required, right? We're seeing here now, the new announcement last week, but you have to have a vaccination for 100 employees or more, right? And that the new normal is hybrid, right? I don't know. Some companies, you have to be in because the technology is not there. But for those that are there, how are you seeing, by doing all this, how can organizations utilize, the collaboration technology to ensure that that experience, when you're there in office, right? We used to, if you had a question, you'd knock on someone's cube or office and say, I got a question. And one of the things with collaboration, right, is always finding. We're always now, it seems to be always on a Zoom or some sort of conference call. And so, you get the presence piece. But how are you ensuring with Zoom, and I guess, what are you seeing is a better question, that the individuals that are, coming into hybrid, that when they're there, obviously they start feeling it's a new normal, right? They start feeling they're back part of the team. And I know when we had some in-person collaboration with our team, it felt we were so productive, so much more productive in many cases. And then on the flip side, there's areas where we're productive in the collaboration piece that we aren't when we're in person, right? And so because you're in a condensed time frame. So how are you seeing that, clients are ensuring that everyone feels that they're part of the team and culture and aren't feeling left out, right? When they come in the office, completely understand that, but many organizations are saying people aren't going to come back to the office. So how are you seeing that from the tech that you're providing, that
Yeah.
is changing and ensuring, because culture is a big thing, right? And making people feel part of that team is huge. How are you addressing that with some of the stuff, and what are you seeing?
You bet. It's all over the place, right? Everybody's different. Every vertical industry we see has a different take on things. Do they need those people in the office? Some are mandating more so than others. Where we see a lot of people given that flexibility, like, do you want to come in the office? Hey, we've been successful for the last year and a half and highly productive without you being in the office. Kind of makes it hard to mandate you need to be in here to do your job when you've been super successful without coming into the office. But I think what you touched on is the most important part, which is the culture. We have, like at Zoom, we've more than doubled the size in the last year and a half of our company, right? And we had a culture of being in person and spending time with people and building those relationships. And I think probably everyone on this call, very similar. And so it's really hard when you've hired all these people you've never met in person, you've never shared a drink or a lunch, you haven't had the water cooler moments. And how do you recreate those? And so I see the same thing you're saying, Marco, is a lot of companies are really appreciating that. And you become, hey, these are things we missed out. But we're also seeing companies say, if you don't come in the office if you don't need to come in the office. If you need to come in the office to get work done, then do it. And so, I would say I can't paint a picture of this is what we see from everybody. It's definitely different degrees from every industry. What I would say is when you look at the busy slide that's been going on here for a couple of minutes, we're seeing this change really from a equitable standpoint of we're all used to being this little square in Zoom. And now when you go into this office, if you think back before we went home, right, that screen that was just up where those three people in that conference room are having a very great conversation. You're on the remote end, just feel like you're not even there, part of the conversation. Sometimes you're hard to hear it. What this is our new smart gallery feature that takes everyone in that room and then individualizes them to their own square. So really breaking out those remote users so we are feeling like we are together in the same experience we are right now. So whether you're in the office or you're at home, you should be that first-class citizen with that same exact experience. And so we're seeing a lot of interest in that capability. And I mentioned this a little bit, but when you look at the hybrid workspace and how do we interact with that, this is a new capability where I can go in any bookable device. I can go in and reserve that from home, from my phone, or when I walk into the office, perhaps on that kiosk, to be able to reserve something. Is it a phone I need? Is it a touchdown huddle space? Is it a conference room? And then I want that to automatically sign out. And these are features we've struggled with third parties trying to bolt on different reservation systems, scheduling systems, and displays to now just very integrated. And you'll notice on this third box here, these Zoom rooms, Zoom phone appliances. So there's rooms, you can schedule these, but there's also these Zoom phone appliances that we came out with that a lot of people haven't seen. The ones that have get very excited because what this is, these are 3 phones that are currently available, and there's another 3 that come out later this month that are even less expensive. But for a couple $100, you can put one of these devices in your room, and you get the full Zoom user experience that we're used to on our mobile phone or on our PC or Mac. So one, driving that user experience is very simple, but I also have all the features of a phone, the ability to hot desk and take these over. But the thing that's pretty cool about them is they're actually a Zoom room. So that is a full video display unit, has camera built directly into it. You can whiteboard onto it. So I say for a couple $100, you think about, it's estimated that 94% of the conference rooms out there do not have video in them today. This is where we're seeing a lot of customers figure out like, hey, we're all used to video. What's that experience going to be like when you come into the office? And I need to be able to deliver those services. I need somewhere where, maybe it's acoustic fencing, so I'm not hearing every conversation or all that background noise, but I also need a way to deliver video in a very inexpensive way instead of putting $1,000 units all across my office. So this gives you a very easy way to do it.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that, is everybody considers going back. We're all used to sitting at home, right, or in our own space, and so that capability to be able to speak as loud as you want, talk as loud as you want, move around. We're going to go into a little more of a confined space. I think that's something that really people need to think about as they go back to the office, but as an organization brings people back in the office.
Yeah. And I saw that question in the chat. So we announced last year, so there's full interop between a Zoom room and a Microsoft Teams room as well. So that ability to join other meeting services from your Zoom rooms, very elegant, but also to have that interop. So Microsoft and Zoom has that interop between the two. And that's just a decision customers need to make on what is that preferred experience, but it shouldn't hold you back from when we know every business is going to get invited from every single different conferencing service based on who invites them to a meeting. You can't really dictate that at times, but it should be for your own organization really simple to join those, and that's what we've delivered. I mentioned the Zoom Phone appliance, and I just want to give a couple plugs. If you haven't seen the Zoom Phone offering, so it's been in market nearly 3 years. This is an enterprise PBX system that we have customers from the largest customers in the world running it to SMBs and plenty of customers with less than 10 users with every vertical in between there. And we talked about at the beginning, same exact platform. We took the audio features in here and added PBX and PSTN capabilities to call in and out of Zoom, and that is Zoom Phone. Same management platform. If you notice in this picture, you end up with the phone tab down below, which is that soft phone. But we also support 70 other video or phone devices, analog devices, overhead paging capabilities as well. Secure, same security as Zoom. We support AES 256-bit encryption. Your SIP device phones we support, and this is delivered across all of our data centers. So I'd mentioned 100% uptime for Zoom Phone this last year. Very simple to add into the platform. And we've had tremendous success. So I'll share with you a customer slide here in a second of some of the customers, but we really focused with Lighthouse customers that were Fortune 10 customers saying we need to move off our long-term on-prem PBX that we've had for a couple of decades. These are the necessary features to move forward. We delivered those. The other area was customers were, and probably everyone on this call, right? You end up with a PBX and then you have a carrier delivering PSTN services. We partner with those carriers in a very great way. So we call it cloud pairing. We've connected our clouds with theirs. So you can leverage those PSTN services. But we've also delivered our own. So we're the carrier in 47 countries. And what customers love is that predictable spend. And I know Teleprise, you guys work with customers to work through those telecom expense deductions. Customers love this because for a set amount, they can have unlimited calling, all their users, but you can also mix and match. So you may have users that, hey, I just need a phone for 911 features. I don't need all the capabilities. I don't need a DID. You can mix and match those and dramatically reduce your costs. Now, we've had a lot of success in this space, and I mentioned some customers. So customers ranging from Tapestry, you may know them from like Coach and Kate Spade, retail environment globally across the globe, inside retail environments. Customer who moved off Cisco HCS, reduced their bill by more than 50% and delivered a better service that their customers and their employees loved. You can see some large names on here, ranging from the largest in the world, but also customers in government. So we're FedRAMP certified. As I mentioned, 47 different countries we deliver native service into, but can deliver it anywhere. And then you'll see companies like a Capital One inside the financial services. One of our largest companies not on this list has 40,000 phones deployed in a financial service environment that needed things like VDI support and the ability to have data retention on voicemails and very granular controls. So this is just a snapshot of what we're seeing in the market. I talked a little bit about 911, but I'll just give you one last plug is when you start thinking about going back to the office, employee safety becomes very serious, right? And we, as we talked about at the beginning, we couldn't take our office desk phone home with us. Sometimes we took the soft phone, but a lot of companies also said, hey, just use your cell phone, right? And when we see that, you think about the brand of your company, how are your employees interacting? What if they leave? What is the voicemail experience? How do they get a call and they need to transfer this to someone inside your contact center, inside your support, or to somebody else? How do they look up that directory? But now when we go back into the office, how do I know if someone dialed 911? And how do I get a hold of them? And so this is what we've delivered, is this nomadic 911 capability that's included in Zoom Phone at no extra cost. But we track based on your access point, SSID, your switch port, exactly where you're at. And now we know, based on that location, how to treat that call. And if we don't know where you're at, we ask you. And now I know, hey, I'm at home, automatically aware. If I go into the office, it knows if I'm aware. And if you can notice on here, someone dials 911, that goes to your internal safety team. It goes out to the PSAP for emergency services. It can also go to that digital signage we talked about that's included with your Zoom rooms. So just a lot of capabilities that are out there. And it gives us an opportunity to share with those on the call. Zoom is a very full feature set that's driving a lot of capabilities as we look at that return to the office, but also help those that are at home.
So quick question on that last slide you had. So you talk about nomadic features. So will that track when I go into the office and then come back home? Because one of the things that, with E911 that people forget about in many of the UCaaS solutions that are there today, and when you even don't have a UCaaS solution, it's even worse, right? Is you've got to put in where you're at. So, if I'm traveling, historically speaking, I was using an application, I could be saying that I was here in California, but really I'm in Texas. That's a problem. So are you saying that will automatically transfer based upon, where you are?
So,
or do I have to
yes,
go in and do that?
I would say yes, but there is a layer to that, right? So
fair enough.
Typically when customers will deploy this, so a couple of things when they deploy. One, I listed some huge customers on that list. None of them yank and replace their PBX and move over. We have the ability, we call it on-premise peering, but we will connect to that on-premise PBX, keep those calls on net. Your dial plan is exactly the same, allows for a seamless migration. A lot of those companies are paying someone like an Entrado or Red Sky or somebody else a couple dollars a user a month for the similar 911 capabilities that, as you mentioned, Marco, are still manual and I have to do a lot of stuff. But there's been a lot of work done on, hey, I already know my office. This floor is based on this switch port and this IP address range. That can all be imported directly into Zoom. And so when that's done, it knows, hey, I'm on the 3rd floor in conference room 2B. However, when I go home the first time, right, it's going to have a pop-up that says, I don't recognize your location. Can you add your address? Once you add that in there, it now automatically knows it. So it's not going to ask you again. But let's say Thursday, we go down to Starbucks and I fire up the laptop. It's going to pop that up again. And so for unknown locations, it will ask, but all your office locations, when through a deployment, you would get those set up.
Thank you. That clarifies. Appreciate that. So kind of circling back with some of the stuff we touched upon, and thank you again for going through some of the questions. Kind of around just going back to some of the topics. From the experience of Zoom and what you're seeing out there in the market, right? What is the expectation now from employees going to this hybrid, right? So the lockdowns and the shift to working from home has altered the employee expectations. But what are you seeing that look like, and what are you recommending to clients to, one, make sure they're productive, as we talked about the survey, the report from Forrester earlier, but one, keeping them tied into the culture and keeping them happy, because everybody is talking about, I don't want to go back into the office. I mean, for me, I miss my office for various reasons, but many people don't want to go back or ever will go back.
Yeah, you're spot on. And it's interesting because I think it all gets down to what are the tools that you deliver to your employees? And are those tools that make them happy? Are they productive? It's my background, delivering happiness. This is our what we do at Zoom. We're very focused on that happiness side. But if you give me something where it's really hard to communicate, you and I were talking before about another solution that, we see customers say, this is just garbage. It doesn't work for me. If it's really hard to connect to a meeting, if you can't hear me, the video quality stinks. We talked about the audio quality better be good. If you can't hear me, then this was pointless. You think about those chat tools and how we're collaborating. If I don't have the right tools, I'm probably looking to go somewhere else, right? So I can be productive. And we've seen a lot of employees, there's definitely a labor shortage, especially when we look at skilled labor. We're all fighting for the best people that are out there. And it starts to become something that attracts those employees, or what are those tools that they have available to them. And so we're seeing, that is a key determinant of that decision making. And, a year and a half through this pandemic, we see, I was on with a customer 2 days ago who said, we really tried to consolidate down to one vendor. It doesn't, like, we're having so many problems with this. And so maybe it isn't one vendor. And this is where we get started with Zoom. So everybody on this call, we'd love to do a proof of concept. If you haven't seen Zoom, this is what we do, because once you see that experience and you start using it, it's where we shine. But I think maybe, Marco, to some of your question, it's not that easy, right? You need to integrate into things like Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics, and into perhaps data retention and tools like Verint and Smarsh and others. And so this is really where we have focused on. We have 1,500 different application integrations that are out there. We have a very healthy developer community with ISVs and APIs to integrate and build custom workflows, because it's necessary. Like, it's unreasonable to think that you're going to live all day in one application and be successful at it. And so this is really a big focus, is how do you deliver the power of video, power of engagement, be able to call and make it simple, but be able to do that in those different applications and workflows.
And I appreciate that statement, because what we see out in the marketplace is a lot of times vendors will say, you can do it all in one, right? And then what we find out, is a lot of organizations, they don't know how to ask the questions for discovery of a vendor. Right? How do I make the change? What are the challenges that I'm going to face? What are the issues that they're going? And everybody, the old plug and play, right? I mean, we've all learned that this plug and play is not really plug and play, and it doesn't work. Right? So, kind of from that standpoint, and I think one of our director of technology kind of coined this term in a presentation we were talking about UCAS about 2 years ago, right before the pandemic, which was unified communications is about as unified as parts of the European Union, right? And it's because it's very splintered in that. And so when you talk about integrations, so this kind of ties into the second point of the topic, and around the strategies for driving unified employee experience, and whether at home or in the office or working from a remote location. You touched upon that a little bit about how you're utilizing the application, but and there was a question here earlier about how do you see, and what are you seeing clients, you talk about the struggle. So, you have a Zoom application. How do you integrate with people have Office 365, or I have, the G Suite, and my email, my calendaring, my presence. What are you suggesting to clients when you're talking about the Zoom phone and the Zoom application, for them to look at? What are some of the pitfalls they need to look at? Because, we were talking about jumping on this. I went from, this morning I've been on a WebEx, I've been on a Teams, I've been on a Zoom. This headset does not like that. It's a challenge for me. Fortunately, I live all day doing these different things, but not a lot of end users are doing that, and that experience can be very frustrating. So what do you suggest clients look at, and some of the things they need to look out for?
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? All around, from everything you described. In a perfect world, you would have that single application, so you don't need to bounce around one to another. But I think as much as you can consolidate that down, so do we have a corporate standard, and this is the platform we're going to use? That's what we want to go with. And I noticed my video just got fuzzy there for some reason, but I'm over here blurry faced. So just to talk about that more, and I'll pop off my video for a second. Back. So what we see really, Marco, is there's definitely a challenge when you go from one application to another. What we have built is integration. So let's say you're in Slack, and Slack is your chat application of choice. There is a Zoom application. So when you click the video button, it launches a Zoom meeting. If you click the phone button, it launches a Zoom phone call. And you want to remove those areas where an end user would get confused. One of those key areas is Office 365 inside Teams. So we have the exact same integration inside of Teams with Zoom, where you can essentially replace Teams being that video conference and that phone and make it Zoom. Now, the challenge is most admins won't go through and disable that button. So you can go in and configure Teams in such a way that to remove all confusion for your end users, you click meeting and it launches a Zoom meeting. And that's just how we work. If you give someone two choices and there's two buttons that look the same and they both do two different experiences, now we get back into those same issues of like, hey, can you hear me? Where are you? I'm in the room. You're not there. And that causes a lot of end user frustration. And so we've really focused on like, what is that one single engine that's going to power those experiences in those other applications? If you can define that, you're going to be able to dramatically reduce that customer frustration and the confusion of which app. But if you leave it to the Wild West that like, hey, we have 6 different applications you can use for meeting services, you pick, then we're in that world, right, that you had today. You get the Zoom invite, you got the Teams invite, you got the WebEx invite, and all of a sudden, does my mic work? Does my headset work? Did that integrate into Outlook accurately and show up? And that's usually a recipe for failure.
And there was a comment here about 1.3 trillion was spent on digital transformation in 2019, and 75% of projects reported as a failure. And that goes back to the conversation around the discovery piece. Is what's the underlying? I think it's easy to stand something up from a tech when it's new, right? And so you see it's very nimble, quick. But a lot of, as we touched on earlier, a lot of organizations have this legacy stuff that it's a couple revs back, if you will, and how do you tie that? And that changes, that changes the way someone works and goes back to the culture. Couple other questions here. So as we go through, we talk about, briefly, the customer experience is starting to take a more important role in organizations, right? And how does the acquisition of the Five9, and I know it's still in process and it was announced, but how does that affect the Zoom Phone and end users collaboration experience? Because a lot of things, now if I call in on something and I've got to be asked or wait on hold or I can't chat, that becomes frustrating. So, what does this mean in your view of, and it's not just Zoom, we're seeing that across the board with other UCaaS providers starting to give, CCaaS and things of that nature and vice versa. What do you think that means for the blending of UCaaS and CCaaS? Do you think we're going to see that become one seamless platform as organizations, as work to provide UCaaS and CCaaS?
Yes, right. So we put down about $15 billion to make that vision happen. And so we're seeing and hearing that from customers as well, right? They want to blend those two together in ways that allow them to do more unique things. And if you think about what is Zoom really, really good at, it is this video quality, uptime, reliable, best experience. You think about Five9 and having a omni-channel routing engine that just works, and AI and bot integrations that they have in that platform. You put those two together, all of a sudden you start thinking about future customer experience and what does that look like. We have a great integration with Five9 as well as several other of the leading Magic Quadrant contact center as a service providers that are out there today. And that was our approach, and still is best of breed. And what we did is we direct connected our cloud to their cloud. We have presence across there. We have chat integration across there and the ability to call into that back office. And so that's been, one level, but we're seeing customers ask, hey, we want a single subscription. We want a single management platform. And this is the future that we see out there. And for those that, maybe you didn't catch Zoomtopia this week, we had a number of announcements, but I would lead you to look at something really interesting that we did announce called Video Engagement Center. And this is really, you think about contact center, it's really been a cost center delivering support. Mm-hmm. We're really focused on this Video Engagement Center being revenue driven, which is connecting people like we are right now in video. And so think about the ability to have an IVR, being able to take a chat, be able to do scheduling, but then move that for video experience directly with an expert. So when we start thinking about like investment banking and telehealth and be able to meet with the doctor and do it across video at a very inexpensive price point that's outside of a contact center. So totally different, but we're seeing, the world merge between video engagement plus contact and customer experience for that next gen experiences. And that's where we're looking at for the future and excited about it.
What are the, from as we go to, this call of future of hybrid work, as we kind of close out in terms of time here and what are the 3 things that you would say organizations need to look for or think about to allow for a productive hybrid work environment, as you're seeing that from a Zoom perspective and the challenges that you see clients face with the thousands of clients that you're working with every day? What would you suggest?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Thanks for the prep on that one, but no, I appreciate it. We see a lot of customers challenged with that. And it's amazing just the expertise we see from our customers, those forward thinkers who are really focused on how do I deliver the best user experience that's productive for my environment and have no technology religion. Let's take a fresh look at the tools that are out there available and do they work for me? And I think you touched on a bit, like we all have legacy applications that we need to support. We may not be able to move with those off right away, but how do those integrate together in a seamless way that makes our end users productive? Second is that architecture. Are you beholden to an older generation architecture? Or are you looking at things that SD-WAN and how am I cleaning up that architecture, especially when I'm at home? We're seeing environments where offices are popping up that would have took them 3 months in the past to deliver that are taking them weeks. They just drop an internet circuit, SD-WAN, and everything's wireless in that office. I think it's really critical when we start looking at those services. And then the third, I would say, just from listening to your end users, what are those surveys saying? Do they want to go back to the office? When they go back to the office, do they want to wear masks? Do they want to have room controls and the ability to not touch things? Being able to cater to them so that you can attract and retain the right talent in your organization. Marry all three of those together, and I think you have a pretty good recipe for being competitive and successful in the market.
Thank you. And one item on that to touch upon, I just want to make sure there's the clarification. You touched upon it earlier, right? And I think this is important for organizations to understand when you're going to, you talked about standing up on that second point, standing up offices. The Zoom phone application is a cloud-based with multiple data centers. It's not a hosted, right? As it's a single instance, as I think a lot of organizations, I don't know if it's not, I shouldn't say don't know, it's not expressed, and everybody thinks it's all the same thing in the sea of sameness, as we call it, and they're very, very different. So that is going back to your kind of point earlier. I just want to clarify for those end users, the users on call it. This is a true cloud-based phone system. It's not hosted in a single data center. It's on a single instance, correct?
Correct. And it goes, thank you for asking. It kind of goes a few steps further, right? The Zoom meetings application that everyone is used to using, Zoom phone is part of that application. It is the audio that we are using right now today, over 3.5 trillion audio minutes a year, pumping across that. We deliver PSTN service on the meetings platform in 130 different countries. What we added was PBX features directly into the Zoom application. And that Zoom application, whether it's phone or meetings, is one that is distributed across 18 data centers globally. We're always in active stance. So for my instance, I'm based in Dallas. I am registered to 2 different data centers right now. In that data center, those are in an active standpoint, and we have a tertiary one. So when I say 100% uptime on Zoom phone, no one would have a clue if we did have any downtime, because we would fell over from one to another, and it is that cloud native distributed architecture that people, when they try to move and rewrite their on-prem phone system, their on-prem video conferencing, and then move that to a hosted environment. That's not the same thing as cloud, that's hosted. And you still have those same issues and same hardware dependencies and operational dependencies.
Thank you. And the reason I asked that is because when we're talking about user experience, right, ensuring that no matter where you're at, whether you're in your office, you're at home, a coffee shop, your car, that makes a big difference. Colby, is there anything that we didn't address that you wanted to address on today's session?
Marco, I think we covered a lot. You got me out of my comfort zone. We talked about rooms and getting back to the office, and I really appreciate the time with you. The only thing I would mention, right, is Teleprise is a great Zoom partner. And if anything in this call was of interest, we've got a huge team of people that look to work with you. And you hit on one of the important things, Marco, which is anytime you're evaluating something, hold the vendors accountable to really understand your full environment, do that proper discovery. That's what my team, and we hold them accountable for. And that's what we're looking forward to do, is allow us to show you the experience and show you how we can deliver that happiness to you. So I appreciate the time, Marco.
Likewise, really appreciate it. It's great connecting again. Thank you so much for taking the time for yourself. We really appreciate it. We know how busy you are. And thank you for the whole entire Zoom team insisting to this. And thank you to the attendees that have sat on this and really appreciate the time. So Colby, thank you so much. All the attendees, thank you for attending and look forward to talking to all of you soon. Have a great and fantastic rest of the day.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.